Most children's shows that deal with younger characters tend to have an episode where one of the characters has to get a big kid bed. For example, there's an episode of Arthur that deals with a similar subject matter, and I always feel like it's a really good topic to include because getting a big kid bed can potentially be scary. I'll be honest, I don't remember it. I don't remember my transition from big bed to little bed, but I know, just as an aside, you get those beds now where they're half cocked and then gradually you remove the sides. So you're not changing the bed, you're just taking the sides away. But that's not what happens with Chuckie. Chuckie gets a new bed in the first segment of the 16th episode of the third season of Rugrats, and coincidentally, it starts off with Chuckie saying how amazing his crib is, how he loves it, and he's just woken from a wonderful nap. Meanwhile, Chuckie's back is to the room, but the babies can see the grown-ups taking away the bits of his crib. And Chaz is really excited. He's going to surprise Chuckie with his big kid bed. Chaz sees this as an exciting time, and of course it is. It's a milestone moment. But when Chuckie goes into the big kid bed, he is, of course, terrified. And he begins to think there's a monster under the bed. We get to see the design of this monster under the bed. And I thought it looked really brilliant. I love the design of it. It's quite a simple design, but very effectively done. And Chuckie has to learn to overcome this, but how will he do that? Well, actually, the grown-ups have a pretty clever idea about it, and I think it's a really important episode, particularly for younger children who are moving on from big kid beds or little kid beds. Not just that, but also a lot of young children, which this is not something that should be encouraged, but I believe it happens a lot, is that children will sleep in their parents' beds. Even when they're old enough for a big kid bed, they might sleep in their parents' beds instead. And I feel like this can kind of help with that as well. It's not the exact same situation, but it is all about sleeping in your own bed when it can seem quite scary. And if Chuckie Finster can overcome it, then anybody else can, because as we know, Chuckie is terrified of everything. I didn't care for the scenes at night because I feel like the darker animation style is not, well, obviously not as bright or as colourful, so it's not to my personal preference, but I will say it was very atmospheric. I remember this episode. This is an episode that I remember relatively well. Not exactly, I didn't remember all of it, but bits came flooding back to me, so it's definitely, one that makes a lasting impression, which is a good thing, and hopefully it's one that will help some children to transition either from a crib to a big kid bed, or, from sleeping in their parents' beds to their own bed. Either way, Under Chuckie's Bed is quite atmospheric and definitely a good episode.